In this video, we're going to talk about managing benefits. In particular, their costs. They can be expensive, so they're important to manage well. That's coming up right now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams, and the host of HR Shop Talk. On this show, you get expert insight into all kinds of things that have to do with HR. I encourage you to subscribe to the show by clicking on the button at the bottom of the screen, or subscribe to the podcast to keep learning from my smart and experienced guests. Today, my guest is Shannon Hughes. Shannon has been in benefits for 15 years. She's a benefits consultant who works with employers to figure out what benefits and mix of benefits is going to work best for them. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Hi, Shannon. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for coming back. All right. So let's just dive in. You help employers select their benefits packages. So what questions should employers be asking themselves before they really get into that?
I think starting with an understanding of the big picture, right? Of like, what are they trying to accomplish? Why are they putting this benefit plan in place is important because that will determine.
Can I interrupt you there?
Yeah.
I've heard that before, and I'm like, well, what kind of answers are there to the why question? Like, why put benefits in place? To take care of our employees. Isn't the answer that simple, or is it not that simple?
Yes and no. I mean, it can be that simple, but really, it's certainly worth drilling down further and just peeling back the layer of the onion a little bit more. Like, really, why? What are you trying to accomplish? And what that would look like is, for some organizations, it's really important to them that they provide full financial protection for their employees in the case of any kind of catastrophic event, right? Some organizations feel like that's not our responsibility as a plan sponsor, as an employer. That's the employee's business, and they need to take care of that for themselves, right? So then their benefit plan would look completely different. So it's really starting with that understanding of what you're trying to accomplish will help decide what benefits make the most sense for your organization.
Do you find that business owners and employers are really passionate about what their benefits plan is going to do, or are they mostly just passionate about how much it's going to cost?
I think a lot of people look at the benefit plan as table stakes, and they don't look at it from a different lens of like a really powerful tool to engage employees and ultimately increase their productivity. Because when you arm employees with tools to enhance their physical and financial and emotional well-being, and let them know that you're doing it because you really care about them, there's going to be amazing outcomes. But yeah, to your point, I think often organizations are just wondering, like, how much is this going to cost? And we know we have to have a benefit plan because our competitor down the road does. And because employees expect it, and how much is it going to cost? So I love to help people see the benefit plan from a little bit different lens as well.
Mm-hmm. So along those lines, benefits can seem like the basics, like the table stakes, as you said. You have to have them to be an attractive employer to compete for employees. But how can your benefits differentiate you from another employer in a meaningful way?
I talk to so many people who don't even know if they have a benefit plan, which kind of blows my mind because they're probably paying for a portion of it as well, right? So differentiating yourself with your benefit plan is not a hard thing to do. In order to maximize the value that an employer is getting from the dollars they're spending on their benefit plan, it comes down to doing a really good job of communicating what's covered and communicating to the staff why you have this benefit plan in place in the first place. And it really is from a perspective of caring, right? And then you leveraging the benefit plan as kind of a jumping off point for enhancing the overall wellness of your workplace. The benefit plan has a lot of meaningful data that you can cull from it. So you can look at, what are the top drugs that are being claimed, and what are the top conditions that are based on those drugs that our employees seem to, or their families seem to be suffering with. And what are the paramedical practitioners that are being used, and what's the utilization on the employee assistance plan, and for what kind of issues. And so if you do a really good job of dissecting all that data, you can use that to inform wellness programming, which is, I think, a really great differentiator and really, really important, especially in these times, right?
So what is the current trend in benefits costs? Last I knew they were rising, but fair is fair. I haven't been in this for a long time.
Mm-hmm. No, they're definitely rising, and there's a number of reasons why. When you look at the underwriting and the factors that the underwriters use to price the benefits on healthcare, the inflation rate that they use is between like 11 and 13%, which we know is not inflation, right? So right there, you're going to have an increase on your healthcare every year if you're adding 11 to 13% inflation. And the reason for that is high cost drugs.
Right.
We're seeing a lot of high cost drugs coming on the market. So the biologic drugs that are coming on the market for conditions like even eczema, diabetes, hepatitis C, colitis, Crohn's, those kinds of things, it's really costly and it's driving up the benefit plan. And then we're also seeing more mental health drugs. I mean, it's always been in the top 10 drugs on it, pretty much any benefit plan I work on. Yeah. Some types of, there's usually at least a handful of depression or anxiety drugs in the top 10. And I think doctors prescribe them for a number of different, to treat a number of different conditions, right? But during the pandemic, that really went up. And then another factor that's driving up the cost of benefit plans is on long-term disability, mental health claims are increasing. Right. And so that's really putting a lot of pressure on the insurers. So, even if a group doesn't have long-term disability, they might be seeing increases on their benefit plan in general, just because of the position the insurers are in losing money on their long-term disability claims. So
how can an employer manage or reduce their benefits costs?
There's a couple of ways you could approach that. One is even just educating employees. So we know, insurance, when it gets used, goes up in cost. If you make a claim on your home insurance because you have a fire or a flood, you're going to pay more the next year, right? So making sure that employees are educated on how the benefit plan is priced and some of the things that drive that, just so they can have some accountability to be smart consumers when they're using the benefit plan, and to make sure that they understand that it's there for medically necessary expenses. That's a good starting place. And also making sure employees understand about fraud. Fraud is driving up benefit plan costs, and it's fairly prevalent. It's costing the industry billions of dollars. So I make sure that every time I'm doing an employee presentation, I talk to them about fraud and what kind of things to look out for. Because if you haven't run across it from a fraudulent provider, you'd be just floored to have someone suggest that you make a fraudulent claim. And so it's better to be prepared for that and have an awareness that those kind of activities are happening.
Speaking of fraud, that's interesting to me. How do you, is that short-term disability, going off work when you're not sick and going to the lake instead? Or is it other kinds of fraud?
Fraud can happen with disability claims for sure. And the insurance companies, they have investigators and they don't let too much get past them. But the healthcare, a lot of fraud happens on the healthcare. With the paramedical practitioners, that's one big category. Orthotics and orthopedic shoes and compression stockings, that's another big category where there's a lot of fraudulent claims. And unfortunately, the biggest source of them is fraudulent providers who are, maybe you go to a spa and have a facial, and they also do massage at that spa, and they say, well, how about we write you out a receipt for massage and we'll just, you get reimbursed and we'll split the reimbursement. So schemes like that.
So back to, we were talking about how to manage it or reduce it. So you were saying you talk to employees about fraud and what to recognize. Is there anything else?
Yeah. So taking it from the perspective of educating employees is one approach. And then if an employer is finding that the cost of the benefit plan really isn't sustainable, we might need to look at plan design changes. To do that, like I like to stay on top of it by about the mid-year mark. I've provided reporting to my clients to let them know what to expect at the renewal if claims continue on the same trajectory, and that allows them to budget for it, or if they know that that's not in their budget, especially these last few years, right? Not a lot of organizations have had the appetite to have increases in their benefit costs. Then you can get ahead of it with some plan design changes. So that might look like adding some, lowering some maximums, or increasing the co-insurance, or adding a deductible, things like that.
Right.
Really some approaches that give employees a little more skin in the game and shift a little bit more of the cost onto the employees.
If this was useful, subscribe to see all the episodes and talk to us. What have you done to manage benefits costs? Anything creative? Let us know in the comment section below. Shifting gears here a little bit, what's the case for investing in prevention so that employees don't get sick?
Well, I think if there was ever a time to look at prevention, like coming out of the last 18 months of the pandemic that we've been in general, most Canadians have downgraded their physical and emotional and financial well-being during this time, right? And at the same time, businesses have been under significant pressure to just stay above water, right? And so they really need their employees to come to work engaged and healthy and happy and ready to give it their all. And they can't necessarily do that if they're stressed about paying their bills or having mental health issues. I think a lot of times employers that I talk to feel like, well, that's not really our responsibility. But at the end of the day, there is a responsibility that an employer has to, their employee as a person, right? And to return them back to their family in better shape than they got them, right? And at the end of the day, if you're just looking at the bottom line, then it certainly benefits the employer to do anything they can do to increase productivity and engagement.
Investing in prevention costs money, right? So is it worth it? The money, is it worth it?
Yeah. Well, from that, I would say it doesn't necessarily cost more than what you're currently paying for the benefit plan. I think it comes down again to fully leveraging the benefit plan that you're already paying for, because there are a lot of preventative programs and resources built in to a good benefit plan that your employees are probably underutilizing. I see it so often that there is opportunity to increase the awareness of those benefits. So it doesn't necessarily need to cost more. And then, like to my earlier point about, developing wellness programming, that takes resources for sure to figure out how you want to proceed. But I don't think that wellness programming needs to necessarily be a significant investment. And that's something that I support my clients with a lot. And I'm especially passionate about the financial well-being. And I see, from a financial literacy perspective, young employees entering the workforce really without the foundation of financial literacy. And then that can end up to, them getting into situations of high debt and not managing their money well, which has a snowball effect on the amount of stress that they're under, right? So for an employer to do an assessment, find out where their employees are at as far as their financial well-being, and what their levels of stress are like as a result, and then develop some programs that are just touching on the financial literacy basics.
Can you think of a couple things that employers need to do better with respect to their benefits programs? I suspect you've already alluded to at least one of them.
Yeah. Well, I would say from an employer's perspective, like look at your benefit plan through a different lens, not just as something you have to have and that you begrudgingly pay for every month, but really look at it as a robust program that can really go a long way to increasing employees' well-being. So I talked to a lot of employers that don't really have a solid understanding of the benefit plan themselves and aren't really aware even of what they're paying for.
Yes.
And so I think not being scared to ask some critical questions. I work with a lot of small and medium businesses, so it's different if you're at a large organization and there's a benefit specialist on staff. But if you're at a small company and the director of operations is also managing the benefit plan and managing the HR components and all these different elements, certainly don't be shy to ask challenging questions and make sure you fully understand the plan that you're sponsoring, to make sure that you're getting the full value from it, right? And one thing I love when people ask me about, this is getting more into the weeds of what a benefits advisor does, but asking questions about how your benefits advisor gets paid and who pays them and what they're paid for, is a really great way to increase the value of your benefit plan, because I have seen instances where benefits advisors are getting paid, generous amounts, and they only show up once a year to email a renewal or meet for a renewal meeting, right? So working with a partner that can really help you increase your value and asking those difficult questions of them is a good starting point.
That relates to my final question. So what questions should an employer be asking their benefits advisor more often?
Organizations should be leaning on their benefits advisor a lot more. I do encounter a lot of organizations where the plan administrator or the person that's in charge of the day-to-day on the benefit plan will be trying to wasting a lot of their own time trying to resolve issues on the benefit plan or figure things out. And it's not their wheelhouse and it's not their area of expertise, and it's not a good use of their time. And that's what a benefit advisor is for. So I'd say definitely anytime anything comes up on the benefit plan, I think it's fair that you don't know right away how to handle, definitely lean on your benefit advisor and get that support. And then the support, it's like beating a dead horse, I keep saying it, but communication and education and really making the most of that, so you make the most of the benefit plan that you're already paying for.
Right. I think that's a dead horse worth beating.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's leave it there. Thanks, Shannon. That was useful. I did another episode with Shannon, and we went through all the various kinds of benefits you can buy and a little bit of the ins and outs of those. So check that out right here. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.